The first time I heard from Ernesto, I was actually in Greece at my sister's wedding. And I remember getting this email from him that basically just described that he was a professional skydiver and he had recently set this world record skydiving with the smallest and fastest parachute in Dubai, and camera crews had been following him for about a year, and that they were looking for a director to finish the film. And immediately when I saw this email, I was quite daunted by the proposal. It was an incredible achievement that Ernesto had done, but I was just coming off the tails of my last documentary, which had taken us 3 years and was this epic project. And so the idea of just jumping into another feature documentary just seemed so overwhelming at the time. But I was interested and I was intrigued, and so I said to Ernesto, let's talk when I get back to New York. And so when I got back to New York, we had a conversation on the phone, and I was curious about his own personal story, what his background was. And he started to talk about his childhood in Venezuela and how his father had actually died days before he was born, and his mother had raised him and his sister as a single parent, and then he had left all of that to pursue this dream in skydiving. And I asked him if he'd been back, and he said, no, I haven't been back in a few years. And I said to him in that moment, this is our film, this is our story. And that is when I really got hooked. I went from being overwhelmed to just not being able to stop thinking about it. And I started imagining how we would, edit together these skydiving sequences and how we would show the whole story unfold. So within a few weeks, Ernesto was in New York with his 10 terabyte hard drive in tow. And we worked with NBTV Studios and our brilliant editor, Jeff Panilla, to get set up and get going. We were so lucky to have Ernesto there with us in New York. Because we weren't there for the filming, we were really coming into this project blind, which I think helped us in the end, because Jeff, our editor, and I are both non-skydivers. And so we really approached it from a perspective outside of the sport, which I think helps this film to be appealing to non-skydivers as well as skydivers. It was great. Ernesto had to put up with hours and hours and hours of me asking the silliest questions because I really didn't know anything. But I wanted to understand every down to like the most minute technical aspect, because obviously in order for us to make this film, and we had to understand. We started again to touch upon this personal side of his story. And it was really our producer, Benga Akinabe, that said, you have to go back to Venezuela because he didn't have any footage from his home. And so we all came together as a team with Ernesto and talked about that as a possibility. And again, it was extremely daunting because Venezuela, first of all, is a quite unstable political environment. And it's, it's not the safest place to be filming. And plus, we didn't have any budget. So there were a lot of difficulties and challenges that we came against. But we all agreed, especially Ernesto as well, that this was an important part to the film and to the story. You get to see a side of Ernesto that is not the skydiver, that is not the athlete. And you get to see his relationship with his family. He's risking his life every day as an athlete, and this relationship and acceptance from his family is really important to him, and I think it's not something maybe that he had really confronted before that trip. So we came back and we started to incorporate all of that footage into the edit, and it took us a while as a team trying to understand how to structure the story. It's difficult because the audience comes into the film with a preconceived notion of knowing that Ernesto survives. You hear his voice narrating the film. So there was a great challenge for us to keep an audience invested. How do you keep an audience interested when they know that he lives? But there's so many films that do this greatly, which we looked at for inspiration, such as Man on Wire, where he tightropes between the Twin Towers in New York. And this film ended up winning an Academy Award, and I watched it a million times in prep for editing Down to Earth because they do such a great job at keeping the suspense going throughout the whole film, even though he survives, right? So this is an incredible thing and incredible filmmaking. And so we really tried to do that. You actually don't see a skydive in the film until we get to the point where it's a flashback and he's taking his first course in Venezuela, because we wanted the viewer to experience this first moment as Ernesto did, and to be equally as amazed and have that sense of wonder and excitement. We also tried to show skydiving in a unique way. I don't think you've ever seen skydiving shown in that way, where you're there and you're hearing all the sounds that the skydiver would hear every time that he's about to progress in his training. We kept the music quite minimal, and we built tension through the natural sounds and through this perspective of Ernesto. Quite often you're actually seeing what he sees. And we decided to start the film on the record day, and just before he jumps, we cut. And the whole film is leading up to this jump, this final jump. It was such a joy to work on this film with Ernesto. You know, he is just such a fantastic person and friend and athlete, and he's so driven. You know, I think the same skills that allowed him to achieve this record were same skills that pulled him through the making of this film. It was just such an honor, and I hope to keep working on more projects with him for sure. We are so excited to finally be releasing this film to worldwide audiences on May 23rd. It will be available across multiple digital platforms, and we hope that you will watch it. Thanks.